My name is Cynthia Ames. I'm 63 years old. For 37 years, I worked as a librarian in Portland, Oregon, quietly, steadily, and with purpose. I never sought attention, never made waves. I wasn't the type of person to announce her wins, and because of that, most people assumed I didn't have any. I lived alone, never married, and my family took that as evidence that my life was small and eventful, and probably in their eyes unimportant. But while they were busy flashing new cars and vacation selfies, I was building something deeper, something lasting. We were gathered in my sister Ellen's house for what they called a family financial planning meeting, but what it really was a strategic ambush over Grandma's lake property. I walked in with a notebook and a pen, no briefcase, no attorney, no bravado. Everyone else had folders, printouts, even spreadsheets on their iPads. They barely greeted me. When I tried to offer a few thoughts, my nephew Brandon laughed and said, "You don't even own a house, Aunt Cynthia. Let the grown-ups figure this one out." The room chuckled. My sister didn't correct him. In that moment, I became a caricature to them. The poor, aging, soft-hearted woman who'd never amounted to much. But what they didn't know was that 2 years ago, I bought the lake property they were fighting over. I'd bought it quietly, legally, and in full, directly from Grandma herself when her finances became strained and the rest of the family was too busy or too disinterested to help. I had the deed, I had the title, and I had the receipts. But I didn't say a word, not yet. I let them go on about square footage and resale value and what's fair. I took notes. I nodded. I sipped my tea. That room, filled with people I once called family, didn't just misjudge me, they erased me. They spoke as if I wasn't there, as if I had no value, no voice, no stake. And the saddest part was how comfortable they were doing it. Like they'd done it before. Like it wasn't even cruel anymore. It was just habit. That was the moment something inside me shifted. I stopped seeing them as family and started seeing them as characters in a story I was no longer afraid to rewrite. You see, I never needed them to know what I was doing. Every time they left me out of a conversation or dismissed my life choices, I chose not to fight. I let my peace speak louder than their noise. But what I realized that day was that silence without boundaries becomes permission, and I had given them permission to think I was weak, that I was behind, that I was poor. So I went home, pulled out the contract, laid it on my dining table. The signature, the date, the notarized stamp, everything was airtight. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel small. I felt ready, not for revenge, but for revelation. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to raise my voice. I was simply going to open the right door and let the truth walk in first. That night, the silence in my apartment felt different. It wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like an ache that had been hiding in plain sight for years. I sat at my small kitchen table, staring at the ceiling fan slowly spinning above me. I thought about every birthday party I'd attended with a handmade card, every last-minute babysitting request I'd agreed to, every time I brought the cheapest item to the potluck because they assumed that's all I could afford. I had spent years quietly loving them, quietly showing up, and they hadn't just missed it. They had never even looked. There's something uniquely painful about being overlooked by people you've never once failed. I wasn't expecting medals. I wasn't expecting parades. But I think a small part of me always hoped that when it truly mattered, someone in that room would remember who I had been to them. Someone would defend me. No one did. And that realization didn't make me angry. It made me cold.
I kept replaying Brandon's words. "You don't even own a house." The arrogance in his tone, the way everyone chuckled like it was obvious. I wanted to scream that I owned 7 houses, that I had made my first real estate purchase at 42 and never stopped, that I lived simply not because I was broke, but because I was free. But I said nothing, because deep down I knew the truth. They never asked. They never cared.
It's a brutal lesson to learn late in life, that love without curiosity becomes assumption. I had loved them from the sidelines, but they never came to the edge of the field to ask what I was doing. They just assumed I wasn't playing, that I had no game to begin with. And part of that was my fault. I thought humility would protect me. I thought modesty would make me safe. I was wrong. But now that naivety had burned off, what was left was not bitterness, but vision, a kind of crystal clear seeing that only comes when you've been thoroughly dismissed. They thought they had me figured out. They thought I was the least successful one in the family, and in that arrogance, they made a mistake. They underestimated someone who had been watching closely for years. So I began preparing not out of pettiness, but out of self-respect. It was time for them to see me. Not the version they'd made up. Not the poor, passive aunt. The real me. The one who had learned how to build in silence, how to invest without boasting, and how to win without an audience. I called my attorney the next morning. I didn't tell him what had happened, just asked for a fresh certified copy of the lake property deed. He sent it over within hours. I printed it twice, once to keep and once to show. But I wasn't rushing to reveal it. I wasn't here for drama. I wanted them to sit in their assumptions just a little longer. That week, I took inventory. I printed out the tax records showing every property in my name. Duplexes, a 4-unit building, and 2 single-family homes I'd bought during the housing dip in 2009. Each one paid for in full or nearly paid off. I reviewed the email where Brandon had once made fun of me for still clipping coupons while he financed a luxury SUV. I chuckled. I clipped those emails like receipts. I then reached out to Grandma's lawyer. I didn't need to, everything had already been filed, but I wanted to confirm one detail, whether the sale contract had a contingency clause protecting against future family disputes. It did. I remembered her asking for that specifically, saying she didn't want the vultures fighting after I'm gone. I had honored her wishes. They had not. Every piece of paper I assembled felt like a quiet stone in my foundation. Not a weapon, but a wall. A boundary. I wasn't planning a confrontation. I was preparing to stop hiding. And when the day came, I wanted to do it with so much calm, so much certainty that even they would have to respect it. A week later, I got another message from my sister. We need to finalize things before the summer. Can you come over again? I replied, of course. I'll bring my documents. She sent back a thumbs up emoji. No idea what was coming. No clue that the woman they dismissed as poor was walking in with the deed to everything they thought they deserved. And I didn't feel smug. I felt grounded. For the first time in my life, I was going to show them that silence doesn't mean absence, that humility doesn't mean ignorance, and that the one you least expect is sometimes the one holding all the keys. I arrived at Ellen's house on a Sunday afternoon. The same snacks were on the counter, same sparkling water in the cooler, same tension in the air disguised as polite smiles. They thought they were continuing the same conversation. They had no idea the conversation was already over. Ellen began talking first, holding a printed spreadsheet with colorful pie charts she clearly didn't understand. She spoke in that careful, performative way people do when they believe they're in control. Brandon chimed in about the projected value of the lake property and how we should all get a fair share. I waited until they had finished laying out their fantasy, this detailed, imagined version of what they thought they owned. Then I pulled out my red folder, placed it on the table without a word. I opened it slowly and slid the certified deed across the table. Before we go further, I said, there's something you should know. The lake property isn't part of the estate. It belongs to me. They stared like I'd just spoken a foreign language.
What are you talking about? Brandon said, a laugh of disbelief bubbling from his throat. Ellen's eyes scanned the papers. Then she looked up. What is this, Cynthia? Her voice was quieter now. Not angry, confused. I calmly explained. I bought the land from Grandma 2 years ago, paid in full, through her lawyer. Not a gift, not a favor, a sale.
The silence that followed was beautiful. Not vindictive, just clarifying. You could see the walls crumble in their eyes, the certainty unravel. Brandon opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. Ellen looked down. The others avoided eye contact. No one had a plan for this version of me. The version that didn't need their permission. The version that had receipts. I stood, tucked the folder back under my arm, and looked at them for a long second. I won't be discussing this again, I said. But I hope someday you will realize how much quieter life gets when you learn to listen to people before judging them. I walked out without raising my voice, and the door shut behind me with the kind of finality that doesn't need a lock. I didn't return their calls. I didn't respond to the texts. I wasn't punishing them. I was protecting myself. The woman they used to treat like an afterthought had found peace in boundaries. I wasn't angry, I wasn't gloating, I was simply... And when someone truly leaves a dynamic like that, the silence can be deafening. Brandon's panic came first. I heard through my niece that he had been boasting about flipping the lake house for a profit, planning renovations before even confirming his rights. He'd even approached a local realtor. When he found out I'd already pulled the permits and locked the property with a personal security system, he unraveled. Not loudly. Just quietly enough that I knew he understood the game was over. Ellen tried the gentle route. Emails with subject lines like, "Can we talk?" and "I didn't know," followed by messages asking for forgiveness. I read them all. I responded to none, not because I wanted to be cruel, because they weren't apologies. They were panic. Panic in the face of a reality they never believed could exist. One where the person they mocked owned the thing they coveted. The rest of the family began adjusting. Group chats without me. Events I wasn't invited to. Holiday texts sent out of obligation. I didn't mind. I was busy rebuilding the lake house deck with a local contractor I trusted. I planted lavender in the front yard. I painted the walls a shade of blue I'd been dreaming about for years. It was mine, fully, quietly. And finally, peace didn't come like thunder. It came like breath, long, slow healing. I spent evenings on the porch with a book and tea. No television, no music, just wind, water, and the soft rustle of leaves. I felt no need to explain myself to anyone anymore. I'd done enough explaining for one lifetime. They had expected me to fade, to remain invisible. Instead, I vanished on my own terms and reappeared only in the life I chose on the land they thought they'd take. That was my justice. Not a courtroom win, not a dramatic confrontation, just the undeniable, irreversible truth that I had quietly, completely won. These days, I wake up early. I walk barefoot through the dew-covered grass by the lake. I write. Not for publication, just for me. Poems. Reflections. Sometimes letters to the girl I used to be, the one who gave and gave, waiting for someone to notice. I tell her she doesn't need to be noticed. She needs to be free. I framed a photo of Grandma and placed it in the lake house living room. I remember her eyes when she signed that contract, the way she squeezed my hand. She trusted me not because I was loud, but because I was steady. I honored her trust, and now I honor myself. The family still exists. They still gather, still celebrate, still move through the world, as they always did. But something has shifted. The hierarchy they once upheld so confidently has a missing piece now. A quiet void where I used to sit, listening, serving, giving. That absence is not punishment. It's power. I never became rich in the way they measure. No luxury cars, no designer labels. But I own something rarer, sovereignty. I don't owe anyone my presence anymore. I don't need their recognition. I have peace. I have my name on deeds. I have mornings by the lake, and evenings filled with gratitude. Sometimes I get a message, a cousin asking if they can visit, a niece wondering about the property. I read the words, feel the pull of the past, and then gently decline, not out of pride, but out of preservation. My life is no longer a stage for other people's performances. It is a sanctuary. My name is Cynthia Ames. I am 63 years old. I am not poor. I am not forgotten. I am not bitter. I am free. And the day they laughed at me across that table, they didn't realize they were laughing at the only person in the room who already owned everything that mattered.